All right, we are live, and I am Christina Previtt. This is going to be an episode of Lawyer Radio. So whether you're watching or listening, welcome. I'm your host, Christina Previtt, and Lawyer Radio is the official podcast of Wolf Esquires. And I'm here today with Christine Matus, who is a wonderful trust and estates attorney, also a very good friend. So thank you for being here, Christine. And just for our audience, you are an attorney in the state of New Jersey and New York, and your firm, Matus Law, specializes in, or we're not allowed to say specialize, focuses on trusts and estate planning.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Welcome. Thank you for being here today. Now, I was prompted to invite you to come on because I saw that you, who are very active on social media, you kind of had a public service announcement that you really wanted to draw attention for the public that they should be thinking about in their estate planning. They should be thinking about who would they want to be the guardian of their children in the unfortunate event that they pass while their kids are still young, still minors. And I think that's really important. There's some crossover from my practice, divorce work, because it's obviously something that people who are getting divorced and have minor kids should really be thinking about. So thank you for that PSA. And tell me, why is this on your radar now?
So, and I appreciate being on your show here, Chris. Thank you so much. So I have kids. And, when I do things, everything I do with my practice, my professional life, it's really for them. I want to care for them. I want to make sure I'm here for them. And many times, though, Chris, I'm helping families. I'm always surprised that there's a lot of assumptions that are going on about what will happen if they are unable to take care of their kids. A lot of people actually may not even have the time to think about it. And it made me think that this is probably something that's so important that we want to make sure that if something happens to us, whether we're alive or sadly, if we become disabled, what will happen to them when they're minors? Because there's a lot of things that will not happen unless you have proper tools in place. But I was fascinated to find out, why is it a majority of people don't have this in place? So you're right. I did put on social media kind of like a help, asking people, educate me, find out what can I do to find out and bridge the gap to tie up those loops, why people aren't doing what they need to do to make sure that there's adults in place to take care of their children, that the finances are all lined up to take care of their children. Because I find that fascinating that if I said it that way, people would say immediately, of course I love my children. Of course I want to take care of them. And then when you ask these, well, do you have this in place? Do you have these tools in place? Majority of the answer is no. And I'm thinking, like, why is that? So the responses during that social media post, Chris, were really fascinating. There were a lot of assumptions, and I was so grateful for everyone being so honest and clear, because it's not easy to say, no, I don't have it. I didn't think about it, or I didn't understand it. I didn't know who to ask. That was so rewarding to read. And I was so grateful that they trusted me to say that. But it really gave us insight of perhaps, how we're explaining how important these tools aren't clear enough. Maybe we just assume everyone knows it's important. You should have it. And well, you don't have it. But it was very interesting to me, Chris, that there was one post where someone said, well, I have godparents for my kids. And I thought that was great. But having godparents isn't the proper tool to have them do things for your minor children if you're not here anymore. It's a great title. It's an honorable title, but it doesn't carry any weight in the legal world, right, Chris? I mean, when you're dealing with your cases, and sadly, if there is a dissolution of marriage and something happens to them, you're not saying, well, where's the godparents? I don't even think that comes out of your mouth, So I thought that was fascinating. That was more than once that someone said, I thought that when we had godparents. And
really,
I get it. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's. I think this is related to another topic: is why don't people have wills?
Yeah.
Just in general, right? Mm-hmm. So you might be talking about people that don't have wills, or maybe they had a will and, they downloaded it off the internet. Like, I'm sure you want to scream when you hear stories like that.
Scary.
But, I've just come to the conclusion it's because people just they don't think they're going to die.
Yeah.
Or at least not right now.
You're absolutely right. There was actually one reply when I said, help educate me. Why, if we know that's important, why haven't we done it? And one person did say, I just didn't want to think about it. And I just felt that, we're going to roll the dice. I felt like, really? Oh, God, thank you for sharing that, because it's probably true, right? If one person thinks that, there's more than one. And
Yeah.
you know what? We don't want you to die, but I wish I could say that's 100%, because you and I have had situations where we're just shocked that we wake up on a Monday morning, like, wait, who passed away? How did that happen? Like, what? And it happened. But you're right. Tools that are available. It's, definitely a last will and testament is the tool that you can nominate another adult to take care of your minor children. That is the tool. And if you don't have it, there's a lot of issues that happen afterwards, and I could fix it. We definitely can, but you waste a lot of money, a lot of time, takes months in the making. Whereas if you had it, we wouldn't have had to go through all that. So
why don't we back up a little bit? Why don't you explain to us, and I can maybe chime in a little bit as a divorce lawyer, what happens if a person dies without a will? What happens to the minor children?
So in a typical situation, biological parents, I get it. You're the parent and you take care of your children. If one spouse passes away and the other spouse is around, they're taking care of their children, what happens is when they're minors, Chris, there needs to be a document that indicates that they can officially handle, say, finances for that children. We'll have a spouse, and this actually happened, Chris, in a divorce situation. They're divorced for years, but ex-spouse wanted to take care of the young children. So I think during the divorce, Chris, they had an agreement that they were to maintain life insurance proceeds.
Yeah.
And so that spouse dies, and the beneficiary were the children. I think it was to help with child support. I'm trying to refresh my family law things. And the children were 12 and 13. Well, 12 and 13-year-olds can't inherit $100,000 or more. What happens is that an adult has to be able to control those funds. Well, without the will that says mom is the guardian, nothing could happen. The life insurance company was saying, well, we're not issuing a check to the kids. And the mom was upset, saying, well, I'm the mom. Give me the check. And they're like, no, the beneficiary are the children. And it was the way it was worded. So mom had to go to court, get paper to indicate that she is now the guardian, the official guardian. She can handle funds. But what happened was, Chris, in the case that I had, they asked me to help mom get appointed. We had to send a notice to all next of kin. And guess who objects? Ex-brother-in-law. And he said, no way is she going to be handling money for my niece and nephew. That's why they divorced. She's terrible with money. Blah, 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 blah. So we had to go to court. Now, if there was something designated like a will or some other document that said this person is going to manage money, that's how it would have been. So now we're fighting in court. And at the end of the day, mom and the ex-brother-in-law came to an agreement that the money is going to be held by the court until the kids are 18. The interest isn't great, but no one can touch it. She's like, well, what are we going to do? I got to do a deposit for college. I got to do all that. It was hard, Chris.
Okay, so what really bothers me about that is you said these people were divorced. So it's standard with an experienced divorce lawyer would know this, that you put a provision in the settlement agreement that the other parent is the trustee of the funds.
Right.
I haven't heard of anybody having problems with that. Nobody ever came back to me and said that they were having an issue. So I'm gathering in that situation, they may have had a settlement agreement and there was life insurance naming the children as beneficiaries, but it didn't say that the mom would be the trustee. Is that what happened?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunately, my friends, is what happens when you have an attorney who just dabbles in family law and doesn't really practice family law, or you get a situation where people just, use something they got off the internet, or they use Chat GPT, and there's finer details that are just missing. So that's actually a great example why you should really make sure that you use a qualified professional for not just your divorce, but also
The devil is in the details, right, Chris? Always,
it's
always.
true. That experience is just priceless. So in a situation like that, those people were divorced, but what would happen if they weren't divorced? What if they were married?
And I've had it also when they're married. A lot of times they will not have estate planning, no wills in place. And the same thing where another client, same thing, husband dies and he had separate life insurance for the kids. And for whatever reason, either his broker or whatnot did not designate any trustee. So again, mom had to go to court and she was upset because she's like, I'm the mom. I'm the mom. And
they were married.
I get that. And they were married. Yep. And they were married. And that they still had to go. They weren't divorced or anything. And that was a shame. That was such a shame. And again, we got it, but it took time.
Yeah. And it's money. And they had to spend money
and stressful because things were due. She needed the funds. She was going to help the kids. So so these are things
let me ask you, can you just simply put in the life insurance, can you just put a provision in that mom's the trustee?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. You should do that.
Obviously, we would not recommend only doing that, because there's still so many other details that
there are, right? Because, depending on how much money we're talking about, do you want them to have a lump sum? Do you trust the person who's going to be custodial? And what if that custodial person isn't around? What's the game plan, right? We always have to ask the contingencies, because if something happens to both of them, without the kids, now who's taking care of the funds for the kids? So, we always want to ask that one more step. And I know these questions are so morbid, and I believe that's probably another reason why people don't want to talk about this and do this, Chris, because it is morbid. It takes a lot out of you. We have to chat about it. And that's why it does take time, right? The experienced attorneys like you and myself, we don't just go through a checklist and say, okay, who do you want this? There's a lot of thinking. Yeah. There's a lot of talking, because we want to make sure that we just don't name people that we think we're obligated to name. We're not taking consideration, well, what's their family life like? Where do they live? I had a woman who wanted to name her brother as the alternate guardian in case something happens to her and her husband. Sounds nice and natural, but her brother herself has already 4 kids and she has 4 kids. So he's going to have 8 kids. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but you have to think about that.
You're a little bit of a therapist and life coach too.
Kinda. Yeah, kinda. And these are hard answers because I don't want to give you the answer, but I just want to make sure, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And maybe he's ready. He's like, I got the house. I'm ready for the Brady Bunch. Good. Or not, if he's a single dad with 4 and now he's a single dad with 8, I don't know. Right?
Yeah. So, well, I think the other thing too that I would want to emphasize is that people are coming to you for this guidance, but what they're also getting the benefit of is all the years that you've been doing this and all the different problems that you've seen come up in all the cases that you've done over the years. And how long have you been doing this?
Oh my goodness, almost 30 years.
Okay. So really, people, the reason you ask these questions, just like the reason I can, I feel like I can look into a crystal ball sometimes with divorce cases, is because I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of different problems come up over the years. And it might not be something that my client is thinking about, but I'm thinking about it because I've seen it happen before. Exactly. So now I know, okay, let's make sure we address all these things, because I know from my experience that these are things that can come up sometimes. And you want to put your client in the best possible place. In my case, at least my clients are, living after everything is done. In your case, it's a little unpleasant, I guess, to have to think about your death and
exactly disability and whatnot. I mean, I truly appreciate that, Chris. You're right. What I always say is that the value of an experienced attorney like yourself is that you've seen certain things and you're just there to make sure they're making educated decisions. I always feel awkward and I don't think it's appropriate when clients say, well, what would you do, Chris? And it's
Yeah.
not what I would do because I may have an idea of all the circumstances, but I am totally not you. And what you prefer and how you're dealing with things and other things you may not be able to articulate to me has to be unique to you. But our job is to say, listen, I'm going to let you know I've been down this road. I know where to take the left. I know there's a bump here. There's a pothole up here. And if you're all good and you're going to plow through and we're going to do it, awesome. But I don't want a situation where like, I wish you told me about that pothole. I wish you told me there was a left. I would have took the left. I
Yeah.
want to make sure that you said, because if they say like, I hear you, Chris, and I don't want to do that, good. Because I don't want to be in a situation like, did you consider this? And I love when they say like, no, but I'm still good. I'm like, okay, good. That's
Yeah.
fine. That makes me feel better because I hate to be like, I don't know if they thought about
Yeah.
it. Right?
People can't treat these things like they're going through the drive-through at McDonald's.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's dangerous.
I know in this age of technology and we can get whatever we want, we can DoorDash, a cheeseburger in 20 minutes, but these things are lasting, these decisions, and you really have to treat it with the respect that it deserves, not just, like I said, downloading something off the internet or, asking ChatGPT. Not that those aren't good resources.
Oh, yeah.
But
It's very helpful.
ultimately,
Sometimes it's helpful for clarification
yeah,
that they could put it in terms that you might understand, but I wouldn't lean on them for advice because they can only give you what you give them. And if you've never been through law school, you haven't done this for 30 years, how are you sure that you're giving all the nuances that you think you should be aware of? Because they're only going to give you back what you give them, right? If you say,
yeah,
I only like, I only like pickles and cheese, well, I guess that's all I'm going to give you. They're not going to suggest all the other things that you're like, oh, I didn't know about that.
yeah.
But,
And I also, I love ChatGPT. I use it all the
yeah.
time for different things, but it's very often wrong.
Oh
So
yeah, I know. Or it misses things where I'm like, well,
yeah,
I'm like, I think it missed a whole paragraph. But one of the things I've always said is that, with what we do, when we build our estate plans, it's like a bridge. I need it to get to where you need to get it to, and I want it to last through the ages of time. It has to last decades. So it has to withstand pressure. And the pressure would be any changes in the law, any changes in your circumstances, changes in your thoughts. And I need to build a plan that I can create the changes. I can build, or I'm anticipating the pressure that I know what's going to happen. So if that happens, we're still good. And so that's how I always picture my plans. They're like a bridge that can withstand the pressure. And of course, we have to come in and fine tune, as in anything. There's things that we can update to make it stronger. But I don't want to make a plan that's instantly great for today because that's wonderful. But tomorrow something will
yeah,
happen. And if it's that brittle, it's worthless. It honestly
yeah.
is.
Now, what we talked about so far primarily was money and assets, but what about custody? So, obviously, children are not property to be left to someone in a will, but if you're married, my assumption is that based upon what I know of family law, the other parent is, as long as they have parental rights, assuming they do, they would be the one that would have custody at that point of the children. Is that your understanding?
You're right. Yeah. Unless there's been a judgment where they've terminated their parental rights or there's been, something that's been concluded of abuse and some type
Yeah.
of neglect, they will. And that has been a tough point for a lot of my clients. I had one client where what I heard and saw, it was a very difficult divorce. She was primary custodial parent. When we were doing her estate plan, I told her, I said, something happens to you, biological dad is in play because he was never rendered abusive. He didn't terminate his rights. And she says, no way, no how. I don't want it. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's going to be a problem. So she had asked me to build in her plan reasons why she doesn't want him and prefers her sister. I said, I cannot guarantee that this is going to last. And I'm curious with you, Chris, if you were representing him, say something happens to her, and he sees this, like, what are you saying? I think that's something to bring the court to undo. I mean,
Parental rights are, they're strong. They're constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And my understanding is, luckily, I've never seen this happen, but when if one parent passes, the other parent is the next in line, to take custody of the children. And if there's some reason, I suppose there could be someone else that may have standing to try to intervene. But I think that's really difficult. You'd have to show that, and really, I think this would be formerly DIFAS, now known as DCP&P, would have to intervene and do an investigation to determine if this other parent is in fact unfit to parent. And even then, the law, real favors helping that other parent to remedy whatever the problems are. Very often you'll see maybe someone has significant mental health issues or substance use issues that are preventing them from really being a parent. But they give them a lot of time to try to remedy those issues. So that would be a whole other long, messy proceeding if it even got off the ground. Because you can't just intervene and say, oh, my sister always hated the dad and he's not very nice and he takes the kids to McDonald's and it's unhealthy. I mean, you're not going anywhere with that, right? Like parenting styles is not a reason to terminate someone's parental rights.
No, I know. And it is hard. Like I had one where though, my client, her health was deteriorating. But she said, I need to get a will in place. Her husband also was having addiction issues. So what she asked was to put co-guardian her mom and her husband. And then she passed away. And what was interesting is that husband said, I don't think I can handle these kids. So he goes, Mom, you should take over. But it took a long time, Chris. It was almost half a year of getting the right things in place. And all of a sudden I felt like, okay, it feels like very family law-ish for me, but we were doing it all in the surrogates court, which was interesting.
Yeah, well, that is interesting because if the other biological parent is amenable to working something out, like in that case where they acknowledge that they don't have the ability to really be a full-time single parent, they can work with another person, a family member or a friend who wants to take on that responsibility. And that may be overseen by DCP&P.
They were involved. You're right. They did get involved.
Okay. So, they're the agency that is vested with the responsibility of getting involved if there's risk of harm to a child. So, unfortunately, I don't see this too much. Maybe it's just my particular practice. I don't see that happen too often, but it does happen. Yeah. And I would say I would send someone to somebody like you, maybe work cooperatively on that, you can't leave children to somebody, obviously. 100%. But you can express your wishes. You can explain the reason for those wishes, or if you have concerns, you can explain those concerns so that they are memorialized somewhere, and that when the time comes, if the time comes, that the right people are at least reading that document and seeing the things that you would have wanted brought to their attention, and they're not only hearing it from some other third party.
Yeah, for sure. And that's always been, I think, especially in your area of law, those third parties, it really confuses the issue, sometimes exacerbated certain things. We already know emotions are high in your area. Mm-hmm. Ours, emotions can be high, but they're more of a kind of a melancholy emotion and very nostalgic. And there are times there's a lot of worry, and I'm always hoping that if I can create something to bring down that worry, to bring down that anxiety, then that's a good thing, because I really would love to say I can fix everything in a nice little bow and there's no problems whatsoever. But, at least we know there's a plan in place instead of saying like, I don't know what's going to happen and good luck, everybody. If something happens to me, at least we have something that we can fall back on. Right?
Yeah. And, let me ask you this. Does your office do adoption?
No, we don't do adoptions. No. But, we have relationships with other firms that do that because, it does come up, sadly, if we have a situation where we'll have people that are realizing that perhaps, as we look into the future and we got to put this plan together, Chris, what is the next step? Maybe we might not be able to handle this, or if they're going to be doing something, we're putting people in place who would love to be included in that child's life. Yeah, that's what happens, so they do need to be involved. But yeah, it's a great question. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking about there's a lot of situations out there where there's a step parent
Mhm.
and the other biological parent really isn't around.
Yeah.
And I don't recall the exact legal requirements, but there are circumstances where the step parent, if the other parent has been absent, just not around, not paying support, various things, not visiting, like nowhere to be found, basically, not involved by choice. That step parent can adopt his or her stepchildren,
Yeah.
and that would then create parental rights. So
Yes.
some of the things that we're talking about would be implicated there. So that is another tool for people if they're in a situation like that, where they might be thinking, oh my gosh, dad hasn't been around for 10 years and step parent has really been their other parent. An adoption might help
Yeah.
alleviate a lot of those issues.
Yeah. And what I do know with the adoptions, though, but the biological will have to sign off, right, to terminate. And sometimes they will. And sometimes all of a sudden it's a wake up call to them, like,
Well,
wait, what is
my
this?
my understanding is they don't always have
Oh,
to sign off.
okay.
If they do, it makes things easier.
Right.
You do have to give them notice and an opportunity to be heard. That's
True.
just the
You're right.
process
If they
in our
don't,
legal system. But very often they don't appear. They
yeah.
don't respond, or maybe they are willing to sign whatever they need to sign. But even if they contest it, you are still entitled to have a hearing where the court will decide
Yeah.
whether the parental rights should be terminated.
Ugh.
So,
Those
but that's like that's a very specific situation. So we've addressed what happens with, money and assets. We've addressed, some of the guardianship issues that come up. I asked you what happens if, someone dies without a will, or if they have a will that, expresses their preference. Have you seen it where, actually, I should ask you, does your office do probate?
Yes, we
Okay.
do, Chris. So probate's a process when someone passes away, and if you have a document like a will, that has to get authenticated by the surrogate court. So you're going to go to the court of where that person was a resident of. So you take that document, they look at it, make sure it was done properly, and then they create paper that indicates who is in charge of your estate. So that's probate, when you have a last will and testament. The other side of it, Chris, is administration, which is almost the same process of probate, but you don't have a will, but yet someone has to get appointed to take over the estate of the person who passed away. So you will have an administration. That has a little bit more steps because we don't have a will. There's certain notices that have to be circulated to show people, hey, John Smith wants to be the administrator, same thing as executor. Does anybody oppose that? So got to wait a certain amount of weeks to see if anybody opposes it. So so someone can be appointed to an estate that doesn't have a will, but you can see it already adds time. And oftentimes that person has to get bonded, Chris. Bond is a type of insurance because they want to make sure that, well, this person stepped up, but they can actually then take all the money and go to Aruba. So the bond is to make sure that if there are people to receive, that they'll be made whole, so long as this, they have this bond that's in place. But that's money, again, from the estate, and it's based upon how big the estate is. And you have to keep paying that bond every year until the estate is done. And many estates, you can have it done within a year, but depending on, do we find all the heirs? Do we know what's involved? What all the type of accounts? I've had estates that last several years, and if you don't have a will, so they're paying a bond.
Isn't that incredible? I always tell people, like with divorce, people want to know, why is this taking so long? Why isn't this done? And I don't have a really good answer for them, but I just say, it's like going to motor vehicles. It's like, it's red tape. It's, there's a line.
Yes.
There's other people before you.
Yeah.
There's not enough people working on your case.
100%.
And I have to say, these days, motor vehicle is it's pretty efficient these days.
Yeah.
And I think I'd rather go to motor vehicles than do any of this stuff.
I mean, so the other aspect of our practice, Chris, is what you call guardianships, right? So we were talking about having a will, and you can appoint someone to take care of your minor children, and they will be called guardians. A guardianship is actually a process where you go to the court and get yourself or get someone appointed over minor children, over a disabled adult, or an adult that cannot manage or have capacity. That in itself, Chris, is a 4 to 5 month ordeal. So this is what you're dealing with the court system, right? 4 to 5 months for whatever you need to do. And meanwhile, so that means things are at a standstill. And I bet that's the same thing when you're having, sadly, clients that you need help, you have a dissolution of marriage or have to figure out child support. It's the time involved. It's just time with everything. It's just how it is.
Yes, but I, again, I want to emphasize the importance of everyone doing their estate planning. And I don't just call it a will. I used to say, oh, get your will done, but you're really doing an estate plan. And this is, a lot of people think, well, I don't really have that much. I mean, what estate plan do I need? And really the estate plan, and you can provide better information, but it's really talking about whatever assets you do have, right? And who's going to get them, how they're going to get them. There's other things like naming beneficiaries on assets that you can do that don't have to necessarily pass by will, that can make things easier for your family. There can still be tax implications depending on who you're leaving things to. Yeah. And also really important are having a power of attorney, because people don't realize that if, let's say, you don't pass where it's like instantaneous. Let's say you're incapacitated for a while, because that can happen. Who has access to your money? Who's handling business while you're incapacitated? If you've named a power of attorney, that person can do those things. And it's really a gift that you give to your family so that they're not scrambling.
You named it. That's exactly correct, Chris. As much as estate planning, many people like to think that it's about what happens when you die. It's also, and a large portion of the issues we deal with in our firm, a large portion of people who call us is what happens when you're alive, but don't have capacity, can't communicate, can't comprehend. Who's going to deal with the assets? Who's going to make the payments to the landlord? Who's going to be able to call Comcast because they just keep screwing up things? Who's going to be able to manage and talk about health insurance issues that are going on if you don't have this document to appoint another adult? A lot of misconceptions we get, Chris, is when people are married and they'll be like, well, my husband can make those decisions. I was like, oh yeah, so you have the power of attorney. Well, we're married. Again, that's great, you're married, but just being married doesn't give you that authority to speak on behalf of your spouse. I know a lot of people are very surprised about that. And same thing when you have a child who turns 18. You can't just come into the doctor's appointment and say, like, what's going on? Maybe the doctor will let you in, but they don't have to. There's something going on at the hospital. You want to call the doctor and say, like, what happened to my daughter? They can very well say, like, oh, do you have a medical power of attorney? I don't think I can talk to you about, because of HIPAA and all that. So a lot of times we are always emphasizing to families, especially if you have children 18 or older, please get these two documents, a power of attorney and medical power of attorney. Then you can still be included and help and make decisions.
So what would happen? Let's say that, because I've always had this idea of next of kin. So let's say that you have a child who's 18, your son is 18 and gets into a car accident and, is at the hospital incapacitated. Who is the person vested with authority to make decisions for them, and how is that determined?
Yeah, unless you have a power of attorney, medical power of attorney, you don't. So what do the parents have to do? File for guardianship, which takes 3 to 4 months.
Oh, well, so they actually do have to go to court and do something.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's even something that I didn't know. But you know what? It's something that happens all the time. It happens all the time.
And I'll share with you, Chris, a lot of doctors in hospitals are sympathetic and they will talk to the parents, even though they know they don't have authority. But I always say, why gamble and have that situation where someone says, wait, something's getting weird here. I don't think I should be talking to you anymore. And they'll have the right to do that. And now what? Right? So now we're at a loss. We're like, well, you just talked to me yesterday. And they'd be like, well, I wasn't aware, because the HIPAA penalties are huge. They could lose their license. So, once they realize if something isn't going right, like, well, I thought I was just giving them information. And if their administrators say, like, well, do they have power of attorney, medical power? I don't think you should be talking to them. That's it. That's
Yeah, it's messy. And, we go through life. I got up this morning. You got up this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Things are good. I had breakfast. It's a normal day in the neighborhood. But we always think that tomorrow is going to be a regular day, and then the day after that, and the day after that. But we're all going to die, right? I'll
tell you a personal story. So last year, I'm home. It's a Sunday. I get a call, and on the line is a person that says, "Hey, listen, are you the daughter of," and gave my father's name. And so I thought it was a scam. I'm like, who is this? And they're like, well, he's in the hospital. I'm like, who? My dad? He was hit by a car, Chris, just like that. He survived. But I'm telling you, I'm on a Sunday on my porch, just drinking my iced tea. And I'm like, what? Like, that was out of the blue. To me, I'm like, oh my God. So, I'm telling you, it really can happen no matter. Everything changes. Everything changes.
It does. And, the example there, too, that I would emphasize is that when that happens, you're distraught. You're not going to stop and say, oh, you know what? I really need to go and do all of this administrative work with the court. You don't want to do that. That's the last thing that you want to do. You're devastated.
You're devastated. You're not your best self. I'm telling you, I'm typically easy. I was like crazy. I don't even know how it was. He was in Jersey Shore. I don't know how I got from where I am to. I don't remember. It was all a blur. My husband was like, "Where are you going?" I didn't even articulate. He's like, "Where's your mom going?" Like he was asking the kids. And I was like, all right, but it's your adrenaline. Oh my goodness. So anyway, you're right. And so I'm always asking families, now's the time to think about this.
Yeah,
now. Because I can't imagine if we didn't have any documents, please, any medical power, I can't imagine I would be so livid if the doctor goes, oh, wait, I need to see your medical power. You don't have one? Ooh, I can't tell you about your dad. Oh, what?
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah. So we've kind of veered a little bit off topic, not too much, because it's all related and it's all important. But I hope that if anybody watching this or listening, if they take anything away from this, it's really just the importance of doing your estate plan, addressing all these issues properly with a qualified professional who's going to do it right, and really guide you and counsel you through the whole experience so that it's just done. And, it's like just having insurance, it's there, hopefully everyone's going to live a long, healthy, happy life. But when the time comes, you've got the right things in place for your family. And I will say too, I hope that people, when they feel intimidated by this or overwhelmed with it, you don't have to have everything figured out to make the phone call. Make the phone call. Call, Christine's firm or, a qualified firm that does this type of work all the time. It's, it's pretty much what they do, right? They're not dabbling.
Yeah.
If they've got like a million different practice areas on their website and there's like 2 lawyers, to me, that's a red flag. You can't be really good at all of that. So find the people that are really good at it and do it all the time and have been doing it, and let them guide you. You don't have to know all the answers to all the questions when you make the phone call, but at least get it started. So I hope that if even one person does that, then we did our jobs.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exact.
And I'd love to have you on again to talk, because I know there's a lot of different issues here, to talk about, and maybe we can explore some of those other things.
My pleasure.
Sort of as a PSA.
My pleasure. It'd be great. But I really enjoyed being here. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping everyone, like you said, they don't have to feel intimidated. I've always said that, we're happy to just clarify. Like that's the purpose of the call, to when you chat with us, just to clarify, we understand, what you need, what you think you need, because there might be things that you don't need. And there might be things you weren't aware of that are important to you.
Yes. And I'm going to have all of your information available in the comments, and if anybody needs to reach out to you, if they're just interested in investigating you a little further, it's Christine Matus, Matus, and your website, your web address is matuslaw.com. Is that correct?
That's right. That's it. Yep.
And we'll have links to that. And thank you so much. We'll have you on again. And if you're listening or watching, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. We're going to be airing every Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and talking to professionals like Christine about different issues that affect all of us, really. So thanks for watching.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.